part out.
You're fine.
But I'll do like your intro and everything like separately, just so I don't mess it up, because
Yeah.
I've messed it up on others
It's
and had to
awkward.
redo it. So I'm like, I'll just do it so I
Yeah.
don't feel weird.
Yeah.
So we can just go ahead and like just
Okay.
jump right in. So I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today, Erin. If you don't know who Erin is, she's the Conscious Mom on Instagram. I'll link her account and her website in the show notes as well. But we are going to be talking about all things conscious parenting. I feel like that is a really hot word right now on social media. A lot of people are talking about it. So I want to know everything about what conscious parenting is. And I'll talk about like some real life
Okay.
scenarios that have happened with my kids and maybe how I could have done them differently. So I'm super excited for our conversation.
Me too. I'm so congratulations on your podcast. I'm excited to be on it and I'm excited to listen to it. So I think this is great. And I rolled when you said like conscious parenting is like trending, it's all the rage. And I just like I feel like that in of itself, I mean, it's true. Like people are hearing about gentle parenting and conscious parenting, and I think it's awesome that we're thinking more about parenting. But the other side of that is like creates so much stress for parents to feel like they're doing it right. And so conscious parenting actually isn't a parenting trend, so to speak, because conscious parenting is really about you learning about yourself enough and being connected to what's going on inside of you so that it doesn't affect your kids in a way that you don't want it to affect them, right? It's about being more aware of yourself so that then you can be more connected to your kids. So as much as it's a trend because people are talking about it, it's really just, it's more of a way of being than like a practice, so to speak. I hope that resonates, but
It does.
yeah,
Yeah, that does make sense. And so when you bring up gentle parenting, and I wanted to ask about that, are they the same thing?
I think people tend to lump them in together, and I think gentle parenting is an approach to how you parent your child, whereas conscious parenting is how you approach yourself and how you take care of the things going on inside of you, how you understand yourself, connect yourself, have compassion for yourself, so that then when you show up to parent, it's less about your shit and more about parenting them, because that's really what happens with a lot of parents that I see is that they love the idea of gentle parenting, being softer and sweeter and not yelling. But what happens is that we are still the same person. Like we're the person parenting, and so regardless of what we learn from other people, we still have all this stuff inside of here, and eventually that is going to come out, and it's going to be in the way we parent. So really, who you are as a person is who you are as a parent. And I think the idea that you can just read a book about how to be more gentle with your child and more understanding and validating them. All of those things are amazing, but I think people feel like they fall short and it doesn't work because you have to address yourself first, right? Because you're the one doing the parenting.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm just thinking about my own experience with my kids. And when I lose my shit with them,
Yeah.
it's usually because I feel triggered or I'm having like, I feel rushed. So, like, a common thing that happens for me is trying to get out the door in the morning to get them to school on time. I have work. I can't just like validate their feelings all day. Like, we still have like a schedule to get to, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so, but like what I've realized is that that's probably a trigger. Like me being late is probably a trigger within myself. Would that kind of be where that comes from, or could it be something different?
Right. I mean, of course. So I think that's the part like so where I practice this, right? And this is the way I approach conscious parenting, right? I'm even sort of moving away from even saying that this is conscious parenting, but the way I approach it is like real parenting, right? Like you want to just be a real parent and not try to pretend that you're anything else other than yourself. I mean, of course, we don't like when we're angry and frustrated and triggered, but sometimes allowing yourself to see what is allows you to disarm and then move forward. So the fact that you realize like, okay, maybe it's because I don't like being late and there's so much judgment for me around being late. You can look into that, sure. But the truth is, it's hard to get kids out the door. Like, I mean, everyone's tired. I don't want to go to work. They don't want to go to school. And so I think acknowledging that, like that, bringing it down to the level of like, we're both humans here and I get it. And relating to your child in that moment and relating to yourself that you get that this is difficult, that can in and of itself help you disarm and be more the parent you want to be than versus totally not being aware of the fact that being late means something pretty important to you, like, or it makes you feel like you're not good enough, or makes you feel like you're somehow failing as a parent or a person because you can't be on time. And so it's just what you said there, being like, like, of course, mornings are tough, but there's something about me being late that I feel like my reaction is so much bigger than what I feel like the situation is. And that's where, in my practice, and if I were to help a parent, I would say, well, let's go into that. Like, tell me more about what it was like in your home in the morning when you were getting out the door. Like, what are mornings like for your family growing up, or what happened when you were late, or what happened in school? There's so much there to understand. And the more you can understand that, the less you can be real with yourself in the moment.
Yeah, it almost feels like a little bit like therapy in a way.
Yeah,
And I'm like
yeah,
trying to think of like how I'm just thinking about my own experience, and I'm thinking about why, how it was growing up, like my parents getting us out the door. And I was just kind of like a rule follower and just like very like a
there you
clean,
go.
organized person, which is like in some ways I'm still that way now as an adult, I I wonder if like that's like it's hard for me when my kids don't listen to me. Like when
Right.
I'm ask them repeatedly like to put on their shoes, to put on their coats, and they're still doing whatever, and it's so triggering to me, and I just have like no patience for that. And I wonder if maybe I wasn't that way when I was a kid. I just listened to my parents. I don't remember anything specific. But so how do you so you so
Well,
let's say like there's a scenario.
I could,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'll speak to that for you. So like that's it. And again, I don't make this, I'm not trying to make this seem like everything is so deep and everything's a trigger and like, oh my God, we got to look into it. But you brought that up. So it's like, okay, if mornings are so hard for me and I feel like this drives me freaking crazy. Your point there is like, well, I always follow the rules. So a lot of times our children come into this world and they either are so much like us or they're so much like the kid we weren't allowed to be. And so that in and of itself is triggering or upsetting because you're like, I did everything the way it was supposed to. I was supposed to do it. And here you are doing whatever you want. And you're like, I don't know how to handle that because I never could do that. So you're like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, I just followed the rules and lived with like the fear of God in me or the fear of my parents in me. And so now you have these kids who aren't doing that and you don't want to yell and, shut them down and squash them to be just like you and be these rule followers who are afraid of disappointing the world. But you still don't know how to deal with that because you never dealt with that as a child. So it's about working through, well, gosh, like, I guess the fact that they're not afraid of me is maybe a good thing, but that, okay, maybe I also need to communicate to them differently, or maybe I need to connect to them differently in the morning. And they're getting almost like the more we resist their resistance, it's just a charge that happens in the family. And a lot of times when I work with moms and dads, simply not resisting their child's resistance and just being like, just switching it a little bit, the whole dynamic changes. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, and I know in my own experience, like anytime I lose my shit on my kids or like I really yell at them or like I'm really firm with them, especially with my 3-year-old, because she has a little bit of a different personality than my older daughter's more like me. She's just kind of like a rule follower.
Got it.
And just does what I say
She
for the
makes
most
me
part.
feel like a good parent.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, she's good. But my little one, she challenges me.
Yeah.
And so I'll yell at her or I'll be firm with her and then she'll yell at me back. So I know it doesn't work. I know it doesn't work to yell at her, but like, I can't help it in those moments. So like, what do you do? Okay. Like you're, sitting down with your kids, you're trying to understand like where they're coming from, but how do you get them out the door? How do you get them out the doors? Because we got to be at school on time. I got to be at work on time.
Absolutely.
How do we get there?
Absolutely. And I feel like in those, so if you're trying to shift the dynamic in the home, you do need to allot some time for error and being late, like in a specific example, because you're trying to shift and change what's already been. And so in those moments, yeah, maybe there's going to be mornings where you're late because you actually need that time for yourself and for her to go through whatever that process would look like. But probably if she's she digs her heels in the ground and you dig your heels in, like you're at a stalemate, right? Versus her digging her heels into the ground and you responding in a way. And if we were in a session, we'd get more into it, but you would be able to understand what's behind her behavior, because basically behind all of our behaviors, or not behind, but all of our behaviors are fueled by a need or a feeling. So there's a reason why she doesn't want to get out the door. And it could be a very basic reason, because she's tired or because she likes to be with her mom and she doesn't want to go to school. But allowing ourselves to get past the fact that our child is disrespecting us or not listening to us, and feeling like it's so personal. And then also feeling like because it's so personal, it's somehow that we're not enough and we're flawed. Like that's how kind of deep it can go in parents. Then we can actually just like talk to our kid to hear really what's going on with them, or seeing it. Because I think a lot of parents say to me, well, I don't understand why my kid's doing this. And it's like, well, behavior is typically the way our kids show us how they feel. It's just doesn't always make sense, like to the naked eye. It takes some time for us to not be so charged and activated, and creating that space in the morning, maybe one morning where you can be late, to really allow yourself to see what's going on.
Okay. All right, I'll try it. I'll try to give myself a little bit more time.
Yeah.
It's such a struggle. And like I said, I mean, just my 3-year-old it's partially her age and then partially just more her personality, but I'm just trying to navigate that and how to best approach it, because I think about this all the time. I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but it's just a thought that feels organic. But I remember my parents kind of like, and no, shame to my parents or anything, like they did a great job. But I remember like my parents saying, you should just be happy. Like you should be grateful for what you have, and like happy that we're doing X, Y, and Z. Even if we were having feelings and we were upset about something, maybe even something unrelated. And I think about that all the time, like, because as a parent, you want your kids, like, why can't you just be happy? Why can't you just cooperate? Why can't you just listen? Why can't you just do this? But at the end of the day, that kind of like invalidates their feelings and can make them feel like the only way to be accepted or maybe even loved is to always be happy, which that's not a good thing. Like all feelings are valid, but I can see both sides now.
Yeah, of course, because the reason your parents said that was, one, because they did want you to be happy, of course, right? But also they didn't know how to deal with you not being happy. Like they don't like that feeling of unhappiness, right? And that's probably something that was passed on. And again, I love that you said like no fault to your parents. That's an important part, because we also have to realize like most parents are doing the best they can with what they had from the previous generation. And that's why I think we're all here even having this conversation. It's because we realize now, like, okay, yeah, how important it is important to not invalidate feelings that aren't happiness. But at the same time, we can't sit around invalidating feelings all day. That's not going to help either. We have to be able to validate and also give our kids the tools to be resilient and move past their feelings and say, yeah, I get that you're upset, want to go to school, but this is what we have to do. It's so important. Sometimes it stinks. Sometimes I felt like that when I was a kid. I feel like that when I go to work. But the good news is that we get through it. There's good parts in our day. Like I think sometimes, I think with every generation, the pendulum swings in the opposite direction, maybe a little too far, and then we find our balance, right? So we won't just be sitting around talking about feelings all day long.
Yeah, that was going to be my other question. I think I saw when I was going through your feed over the last week, I think I saw a video where you were talking about that, where just like how the different generations before us kind of parented, and now we're kind of coming to this where we're trying to parent in a different way. And I really liked that. So I know that there's some, misconceptions about gentle parenting or conscious parenting, is that, some people are resistant against it because, kids can just kind of do what they want, or you're not disciplining them and they're not listening or learning, or they're being disruptive in public. What do you have to say to people who say that?
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I understand. I think that I think just hearing that word gentle parenting, you can judge it. And I can't really speak to gentle parenting because that's not like my area, but I think maybe the misconception of conscious parenting is that it's just so fluffy and then it's all about everything about the kid, nothing about you. And I think it's the contrary. I think it's everything about us as a parent. It's more about the parent. It's more about owning your stuff, being accountable, but also having compassion. It's not like a harsh judgment on ourselves. It's like, gosh, I'm going to figure out myself so that then I don't have to put all my stuff onto my kids. And I think that probably that misconception is that you're in a zen-like state, or that you're always calm, or that nothing bothers you, or that your child, or that this is the way your child's definitely going to listen to you. I'm like, absolutely, this is not the way your child will definitely listen to you. I don't think there's any parenting, strategy out there that's going to give you that. But I think instead of spending all of our time trying to figure out how to control the child, why don't we turn it around and learn how to control ourselves in a way? That way we're not so dependent on everything in the outside world for our own calm and peace and happiness. Like, so much better to already have that within you and be able to navigate the uncertainty of the world versus letting the uncertainty of the world determine how we feel inside.
And what's the best way, would you say, like, to regulate your own emotions when your child is having a hard time or not listening, or you feel triggered in some way? I mean, I definitely feel that in the moment as well, like mom rage, or I feel like very triggered, want to yell, just listen to me. I mean, do you have any tips for how to regulate your emotions so you don't have those outbursts?
There's so many ways, and I think it depends on the person. So like, I have a small groups going on right now, and I was telling the girls the other day, the girls, or women, when I say girls, sometimes when I'm like freaking so frustrated with these kids, right? I have been nice, I have been accommodating, and then they're still on the couch. They won't turn off the TV and go and take their showers. I was telling the girls that sometimes when I want to yell, I will just sing it in like an opera-like voice. I'll be like, I have asked you 100 times. Like, I show them that I'm like, guys, I'm so freaking frustrated. I have asked you so many times. Like, that for me works. And not everyone feels like they can be playful and goofy. That's my thing. So that's not your thing. It's fine. But like, I like to disarm myself in that way, because I know they're just freaking tired, and I don't take it personally at this point, but a lot of people do. So that's one thing. For me, the quickest way for most people to disarm and not yell is really identifying the feeling or the emotion in their child to something of themselves, because I think sometimes we just forget that they're human. So like, if it's because your child will get off the couch, like, you can understand what it's like to not want to turn off something you're watching that you love. If someone turned off Housewives while I was watching it, right? I'm like, especially Salt Lake City reunion.
I know. I'm so surprised actually we haven't even talked about that yet.
We will talk about it after. But
okay.
Like, I was so pissed, right? Another thing I like to tell parents is like, think about it. If someone was in control of what you wore, what you ate, when you ate, how much you ate, like, I'd be raging too. Now, I know it's nice to be a kid. We think, because so much is done for them and we're like their snack servants, but like, in the end of the day, they really don't have a lot of autonomy. And I think when you can like just connect to that for a split second, it can take you down from feeling like you're the victim to just like, all right, they're human too. I get it, and it just takes you down a notch from feeling like it's about you to realizing it's just a human thing that you're both going through.
Yeah, I love that. I saw a video a little while ago on Instagram or TikTok that was like, whenever I feel like losing, I mean, it said it better than this, but it was like, basically like anytime that like I'm going to lose my shit, like I imagine myself, or try to imagine myself like as like an 80-year-old, person, a grandpa, and like how I would react in this moment, given the chance to do it again or something like that. And I try to think about that too, but it's also really hard in the moment. I like that. Just kind of.
Here's one more, as you were saying. I also just love what I like to call it appropriate transparency with our kids, because I think sometimes we just, again, because of this, like, maybe the idea of gentle parenting, I'm not saying what it is that we're supposed to just be like a Disney princess always with them and be like, I've asked you 10 times. Like, no, I will say to my kids, like, guys, I've asked you 10 times, like, I'm losing it over here, and I'm not sure what else I could do to get you to the bath. I'm like, your TV's now off. I'm like, so, like, I just put it out there with them sometimes. I like to identify that I am frustrated. I'm not saying I'm frustrated and it's your fault. And then, because I think that's like a big thing for us. We're like, we don't want our kids to feel responsible for our feelings. Of course not. I think that's a whole other thing. But I think our kids do need to know that their actions will affect other people in this world, right? Like my feelings and how I respond to them, those are mine. But your actions do affect me. And so I'm a big proponent of telling my kids, like, hey, guys, I'm frustrated. I'm exhausted from my day. Like, you're exhausted. I'm like, I'm not sure what else I can do at this point. I'm like, the TV's off. So if you want to get in your bath, fine. If you don't, then you have to go right to bed. Like, it is what it is. I'm not telling them it's your fault I yelled, right? There's a difference in that. And I think allowing our kids to see that they do have an effect on other people, but while still taking accountability for our behaviors is like key. It's like real.
When you're conscious parenting, are you able to discipline?
I guess so. I mean, I think in the traditional sense, I think in my course, I say it's more about natural consequences. So for me, I'm really against not against, but I just don't see it to be effective when you're so pissed and you're out of control, essentially. Like your child's not controlled, so you feel out of control and you just take away the thing that they love the most. It feels really like, I don't know, it just feels like icky because then the parent gets upset that the kid says something mean to them. I'm like, you just did the same thing, like basically. So they're trying to hurt you. You're trying to hurt them by taking something away. However, in the situation where my kids didn't listen to turn off the TV, I'm like, all right, well, we don't have TV anymore. Like next time, or maybe next week, we'll figure out if you can handle turning it on and off again. To me, that's a natural consequence. I mean, it's not so natural, but it's just like, if you don't follow the rules to have a privilege, then let's reel back the privilege or let me be the one to control the privilege, if that makes sense. But I'm against like random punishments of like, well, then you don't get your iPad when it had nothing to do with the iPad. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've tried doing that. I do try like in the moment when it makes sense to take away a certain privilege that relates to like whatever it is that I'm asking them to do when they're not listening or following the rules. But there's times I'm trying to think of like a scenario like off the top of my head, but sometimes there's not really like a natural consequence.
True.
And so I don't know what to do like in those moments. And kind of my default thing, and this might totally be wrong, but I mean, I'm just like flying by the seat of my pants, but it seems to be effective is like the 1, 2, 3. And I know that my parents did that when I was growing up too. And it actually does seem to be effective, but I don't know how my kids feel about it. Like maybe they think I'm being a mean mom or something like that, but it does get them to move and do what I'm asking them to do.
And that's just like, conditioning, right? Like they're just used to knowing when you get to 3, it's time, right? Like it could have been, you could say red, white, and blue, right? It's not even about that. It's just that they know like that there's a stimulus and a response. Maybe that's not the right way to say it, but like when this happens, when she says this, I better do that. So again, like, because I don't think I don't have a Bible of conscious parenting. If you were to ask in general, no, it's no punishment, but I think kids need to see that if there isn't an actual natural consequence, like you're jumping on the couch and you fall off and it hurts, like I don't need to punish you. You hurt yourself. That hurts, but I can make sure that you're not allowed on the couch anymore. You know what I mean? Like there's that, like that's the way to enforce that. But I just also think that, again, like in my mind, I'm always trying to simulate how the world, how what I'm teaching them in my home is going to help them in the world. If I am acting like their mean words don't hurt my feelings, I don't know if that's going to help them in the real world. I'd let them know. I'm like, gosh, that was hurtful. Like, I get that you're mad, but I really don't like when you say you hate me. Hurt my feelings,
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And I like just being like, transparent with my kids too. And let's talk a little bit about repair as well. So like when you use your shit on your kids, they're mad at you, and then you feel shitty. I mean, frankly, you just feel crappy after, and then the mom guilt sets in. What's the best way to repair with your child?
And I think it's not like I'm not into scripts, but I think the general formula is recognizing that you're accountable for your for your behavior, and that's really it. You know, and I think it's hard if you want to add a but in there, like, oh, I'm really sorry I yelled, but it's because you weren't listening. I think better to say it is to go with your apology first. Obviously, if there's like an immediate danger or something, you really need to talk to your child about their behavior first. But for me, a repair is generally like, I really don't like how I spoke to you. And you know what? Or I really don't like that I took your iPad away randomly. I just felt like so upset that I didn't know what to do and that wasn't right. So I'm sorry. And I leave it at that. I think it's more just I think it's a quick but heartfelt, and you actually want to mean it, that you realize, like, shit, like, that sucks. I really don't like how I did that. What happens over time is that your child will also repair with you. They will start to say the same things to you. Like, my son will say to me, and trust me, my kids are nowhere near, like, perfect at all, as I'm not either, but my son said to me the other night, like, I'm really sorry I said all that. I was just really mad. Like, I was really angry, and I'll have moments where my son comes to me and is like, Mom, thanks for everything you do. And the next day he's like, hey, you ruined my life. Great.
You're the worst.
Yeah, I am the worst. Every day I'm the worst, and also the best every other day. So
yeah,
I think our kids are just really watching us and learning from us. And I think if our intention is to parent so that they do it just like us, it's so different than us just really wanting to make sure they know we care, we're sorry, and that we did mess up, and it's human. But it's, it has to come from this place of, like, you're not apologizing for them to accept you and give you their, to absolve you. If you're looking to make sure you're so worried, it has to come from a place of, like, I really thought about it and I don't like how I did it, and, like, I want to move forward. And I think it's concise as we can be. It's the same with validating their feelings. Like, I don't think we need to sit in it and make it a big thing. I think it's just modeling that we recognize it. We're human. We take accountability. I'm going to try better. I'm going to try to do better. And let's move forward.
Is it best to wait until after everyone's kind of cooled down and maybe in a quiet moment, kind of hold off on that until everyone's calm?
I think I think when your child is like their brain's offline, like their ability to hear you, of course. I also think it's good to take time. Every child's different. Some kids want to, they want their space after they're upset with you, or they're upset. Or some kids are like immediately want to be right with you, and we're the same way. It's like we have to know how we are as well. So I think sometimes, like, I actually have to think about it for a little bit and how I want to say, and how I want to handle it. Yeah.
So is there a difference with conscious parenting and how you parent in public versus how you parent at home? I know for myself, like when I'm in public, I feel a little bit more like people are watching me, or I need to be conscientious of other people and like their space and how my child is behaving. They're not running around or doing things that maybe I would be okay with in my own home. So what's the best way to approach that? Like a situation, maybe a tantrum or something that's happening in public. What's the best way to handle? I think that a lot of people kind of struggle with that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I can't tell you how much of our parenting in public is performative and about us feeling embarrassed and judged, and so of course, right, everyone has different levels of their self-conscientiousness. However, for me, I have to just, like, it doesn't, again, I actually, as much as I have cared, I don't care about what Barbara thinks, whoever she is out there watching me parent her kid. Like, in that moment when my child's having a hard time, or giving me a hard time, having a hard time, I'm going to treat them like they're the only person there. Okay, if your child's like acting a fool and crazy and harming people and disturbing things, I'm going to remove them so that then I can have that conversation with them. But again, it's never personal to you. It can feel so personal to you. So if you feel like, why are they doing this to me? Like, why are they embarrassing me? That's the you thing that you can work on in the world of conscious parenting. In the moment when you're with your child, you have to separate that and say, you know what, like, I want to help my child. Like, if I could erase all the other people out there, what I really want to do is make sure my child's okay and make sure that they have what they need. I want to know what's going on for them. Are they overstimulated? Probably. It's like too much stuff going on. I need to move them to like a quiet place, or I need to just like be quiet with them somewhere. That's something I talk about every holiday, basically, to remind people, like, it's that time of year where there's a lot of people around, a lot of parties, a lot of moods. So if your kid's acting a fool, it's likely that they're just like overtired and overstimulated. And so bring them somewhere else and just maybe even just be quiet, or say like, oh my God, it's so loud in there. Maybe we need some time, just
Yeah.
me and you, or I just really want to be with just me and you. So yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely think every parent can feel embarrassed in those moments, and that's normal, but also try to push it aside so you can do what you really want to do, which is help your child.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard in the moment. I feel like,
So hard.
like as you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, it sounds so obvious. Like it's not that hard. Like to be, when you're in public and your child is having a tantrum or they're hitting another child, like to just remove them from the stage. It sounds so obvious and so easy, but in the moment, it's just not. It seems so much harder, and it's so hard to not be reactive to that. So I think that, we've already kind of touched on things that you can do, but what's your best piece of advice, would you say, like in those moments?
When your child's doing something that's embarrassing.
Yeah, in public, and like you feel triggered, you feel overwhelmed, you're overstimulated, they're overstimulated, people are looking at you.
Yeah, and especially if you're in a place where you feel like these people aren't like good humans who understand how hard it is to raise a kid.
Right.
I love transparency. For me, is like an appropriate transparency for your kids, for other people, helps me too. I think sometimes when we call out what's happening, it can really help us take it down a notch and feel like less embarrassed. Like if there's another mom with you, you can be like, a tantrum at a party, who would have thought, like essentially calling out that this is tough to deal with, or that this is hard for me. Getting more honest with yourself, right? I think that to me is like, call it as it is instead of try to pretend that it's not something. And that is one of the biggest things I think for moms, dads, parents in general, is that we're just taught to, like, whatever we feel, like we're taught to do everything but feel our feelings. Like we're taught to just push it down, cover it up, pretend like it's not there, cover it up by doing something or being happy or buying something. And we want to just always suppress. But when you actually just reveal a little bit of what it is, it's just like a breath of fresh air. It's like, I'm not trying to hide this. Everyone sees my child is acting crazy. If I feel embarrassed by that, again, it's a me thing. And that's where conscious parenting, like one-on-one sessions, can really help you, because you're starting to dip into like what this means about me and why this is, why I feel like who I am is dependent upon others' approval or others' validation. So I don't know if that helps you, but yeah, I think just revealing the honest, like, part of what's happening to yourself and someone else, not to like talk poorly about your child, and we can all make funny remarks. I mean, when my kids aren't looking, I definitely roll my eyes, or I'll text my husband, what a little a-hole, like we joke. Like, obviously I don't think that, because again, we're human. Like, these kids they could be so annoying sometimes. We're annoying sometimes. Like, so yeah, I think just calling it as it is very helpful. I think I just made a video on that, of like, tell on yourself. Like, essentially, when in your bad mood and you're cranky, I'll tell my kids, I'm like, I am so cranky. Like, I'll just let them know. Yeah. And that helps me, like, take a little breath. I don't have to pretend.
Yeah. Well, and I like what you said about kind of like making a joke out of it, or like using your opera voice. Like, I know for me, like, I make up random songs for my kids. Like, one that we do is like, listen with your ears. And then I'll just say like other just weird things like in the moment. But like, I feel like for me, that helps as well. And kind of lightens the mood for my kids, so they don't feel like, oh, I'm, I'm scared of mom or something. I don't know. So let's talk about your coaching program. So know that do you do one-on-one coaching or is it group sessions?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yes, I do one-on-one. I work with parents one-on-one, mostly moms, but I do work with dads, and I do groups, and sometimes I do workshops. But I really just love the one-on-one work. That's my favorite, and I love seeing the moms. Every mom comes with like so much amazing like strength and the positives of. They have like most parents come to me with like all the good that they're doing, and so my focus is on helping them highlight all the good and savoring that stuff because that when we do that and we understand when we're doing it right, it helps us it brings that energy and confidence and comfort into the stuff where you want to improve it, and that again, like something I was thinking about you actually while I was driving and knowing we're going to do this podcast is that like there's a lot of mom accounts out there that are so funny like yours, but that don't offer like light at the end of the tunnel and don't help you also want to do better. And I think that's so important because like it's great to feel seen and heard as a mom, but if you just stay in the part of just complaining and thinking it's all the bad stuff and how hard it is, it doesn't really help you. It's nice to be seen for a little bit like that, but then to elevate and move you up. And it's kind of what I love about your account because it's so relatable and real, but then also just like still makes you feel good. You don't feel like, oh, mother is a prison.
Yeah.
And that's similar to my practice is like the parents I work with, we acknowledge all the hard stuff that is parenting, but we always go into their history because that's so important in understanding why we are the way we are. But then it's about maximizing the joy and maximizing the good stuff that you already have and building on that because it's just so much better to build on the good stuff than only target all the things you're doing wrong. Like that's not going to help anybody.
Yeah, I like that so much. And it's so true. Like it is very important to like feel seen and validated and that like your experience is normal. But then, yeah, at the end of the day, like you also want solutions to how to improve whatever or to get you through this difficult time. And I think that just kind of a random thought that I just had, I don't want to lose it. But I think anyone who's interested in just like parenting, you're reading a parenting book, you're listening to this podcast, you want to learn more. I think that shows that you're a good parent. Like you want to do a good job. I think we're so worried about our kids, but at the end of the day, like you're a good parent for even just caring to learn about this or hear someone out or look at a different perspective. I think that's so important.
100%.
So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right. I'm just saying you're so right. I say that to every parent. I'm like, you're already here. Like I think like most parents' biggest fear is that they're not doing enough or that they're going to somehow parent in the not so great ways they were parented. And I'm like, that's not how it is. Of course, we have an environment where we're raised in and certain tendencies and things we're used to, but like, no, like you're already here. If you're listening to this at the end, yeah, you're all right.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, how can people connect with you, Erin?
Find me on Caitlin's podcast. There you go. You'll find me in there. Yeah. My whole approach is I want you to know how doable it is to be able to make the shifts you want to make. I'm never going to tell you the shifts you need to make, but if you want to make shifts, I love helping people make these like tiny little shifts because they build up and that creates big change, rather than trying to be like do this big, grand, rebrand of yourself as a mom. Yeah, that doesn't usually work. It's just building on these tiny little things that you're probably already doing.
Yeah, I love that. Just kind of just changing just one small step at a time. I think that's a good takeaway. Perfect. Well, I know that your time is so valuable, Erin, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join us and talk about conscious parenting. You guys can follow Erin on Instagram. Her handle is It's the Conscious Mom. I'll link her in the show notes as well. And you can also learn more about her coaching program. I'll link her website as well in the show notes. So thanks so much for joining us, Erin.
I'm so glad I got to be on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.